The door opened slow, the way old doors do when the wood has shifted with 22 winters, and the hinges have not been oiled in any of them. He stood on the concrete step, in a leather cut he had owned longer than the woman inside had been alive, and his hands hung at his sides because he did not yet know what to do with them. The porch light buzzed once and then steadied. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked at nothing. He had practiced the first sentence for 2,000 miles, rolling it around in his mouth like a stone, polishing it into something he could say without breaking. He had practiced her name. He had practiced the apology. He had practiced telling her she did not owe him a single second of her time. None of it mattered because she spoke first. She looked up at him, this woman with his eyes and her mother's mouth, and the four words that came out of her were quieter than the porch light and louder than the engine still ticking in the driveway behind him. Pa, you came back, not a greeting, not an accusation. A question with the smallest crack in the middle of it, the kind of crack a child makes when she is trying very hard to sound like an adult. He could not answer her. He could only nod, because his throat had closed around 22 years of unsent letters, and a shoebox he did not yet know existed. Stay with me on this one. Because what she would hand him before the night was over is the kind of thing that does not happen in the world I thought I knew. His name was Calvin Sutherland. Everyone who had ever ridden with him called him Cal. The patch on his back was older than most of the men who wore the same one now, and the road had taken more from him than it had ever given back, which is the deal you sign without reading when you are 19 and you think the wind is a kind of family. He was 60 years old the night he stood on that porch in a town called Belden Falls, in a state he had sworn he would never set foot in again, and the daughter looking up at him had been 5 the last time he had seen her face. 5 years old, in pajamas with strawberries on them, standing barefoot on a kitchen floor at 4 in the morning while he zipped a duffel bag and told her mother he would be back by Sunday. He had not been back by Sunday. He had not been back by the Sunday after that, or the Sunday after that, and the Sundays had stacked up into months, and the months had stacked into years, and the years had become a wall so tall he had stopped being able to see over it. 22 of them. Her name was Jolene. Her mother had named her after the song because her mother had a sense of humor that Cal had not deserved and had never matched. She was 27 now. She was standing in a doorway in a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big for her, with her hair pulled back and a coffee mug in her left hand that said World's OKAYESD Teacher, and she was looking at her father for the first time since the Clinton administration. The drive-in had taken him 4 days. He could have made it in 2, but he had stopped in every town with a diner because every mile closer to Belden Falls was a mile he had to convince himself to keep moving. He stopped in Amarillo and sat in a booth for 3 hours pretending to read a menu. He stopped at a gas station outside Springfield and stood next to the pump for 20 minutes after the tank was full, asking himself out loud whether he had the right to do what he was about to do. A trucker had walked past him and said, "You okay, old man?" And Cal had said, "I don't know yet." That was the most honest sentence he had spoken in a decade. The reasons he had left were the kind that looked different depending on what year you ask him. When he was 40, he would have told you he left because the club was the only family he had ever understood. When he was 50, he would have told you he left because he was scared. Scared of being a father. Scared of being the kind of father his own father had been, which was the kind that made the inside of a house feel smaller than the inside of a jail cell. When he was 60, sitting on that porch step, he would have told you the truth, which was that he had left because he was a coward, and that all the other reasons were paint he had slapped over the coward to make it look like a man. He had ridden out of Belden Falls on a Tuesday in May of 2003. He had told his 5-year-old daughter, who was eating a strawberry Pop-Tart at the kitchen table, that he would be back by Sunday and that he would bring her a stuffed horse. He had bought the stuffed horse 3 days into the trip. He had kept it in his saddlebag for 6 years. It was in his truck right now, in a plastic bag in the passenger footwell. His wife. Her name had been Doreen. Doreen Sutherland, born Doreen Pike, dead at 49 of an aneurysm in a Walmart parking lot in the fall of 2015. He had not known she was dead for 8 months. He had found out from a man named Big Eddie at a rally in Sturgis, who had said, "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, brother," and Cal had walked out of the bar and sat in the dirt for an hour and not cried, because he had not earned the right to cry for her. He had not called his daughter because he did not have her phone number, and because even if he had, what would he have said? He had been a ghost for 12 years by then. Ghosts do not call. Ghosts do not show up at funerals. And yet here he was on a porch in Belden Falls, with the porch light buzzing and a dog barking somewhere and a 27-year-old woman in a teacher's sweatshirt asking him a 4-word question that did not have an answer, because every answer he could think of was an insult to how long she had waited to ask it. He had rehearsed this moment in motel rooms from Bakersfield to Memphis. He had imagined her slamming the door. He had imagined her screaming. He had imagined her crying, which was the version he had dreaded most. He had not imagined a woman who would look at him with something that was not quite forgiveness and not quite anger but something older than both, something that had been sitting in her chest for 22 years, waiting for a face to land on. "Pa, you came back," she said again, softer this time, and he realized she was not asking him. She was asking the porch. She was asking the 5-year-old version of herself, who had stood at the kitchen window for 3 months in 2003, watching the driveway. He took the leather cap off his head. He said, "Yeah, baby." "I came back." She did not move. She just looked at him for what felt like a year, and then she stepped back from the door, and she did not say come in, but she did not say go away either, and he stepped over the threshold of his daughter's house for the first time in his life. The inside of the house smelled like coffee and old books and something cinnamon. There was a couch with a knitted blanket folded over the arm of it, and a small dining table with 2 chairs, only 2, and a framed photograph on the wall of Doreen at maybe 40, laughing at something off camera, with her hand on a 5-year-old Jalene's head. He had to look away from that picture. He had to look at the floor. Jalene closed the door behind him. She did not lock it. She walked past him into the kitchen and she said, "Do you drink coffee?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Don't call me ma'am, pa." And that one word, that pa, from the mouth of a grown woman, sat down in his chest like a stone and did not move for the rest of the night. They sat at the table. She poured him coffee in a mug that said BELDEN FALLS Elementary Staff, and she poured herself coffee in the world's OKAYESD Teacher 1. And for the first 3 minutes, neither one of them said anything. He looked at his hands. She looked at her hands. The clock on the wall, which was shaped like a cat with a tail that swung back and forth for the second hand, ticked loud enough to fill the whole house. He thought about all the things he had planned to say. He thought about the speech he had practiced on a picnic table outside a rest stop in Oklahoma, the one where he was going to take responsibility for everything, the one where he was going to tell her she did not owe him a thing, the one where he was going to say her mother was the best woman he had ever known and he had wasted her. He opened his mouth to start it. He closed his mouth. He could not start it. He could not start it because she was looking at him, and her eyes were her mother's eyes, and a man does not deliver a speech to his dead wife in his living daughter's face. She spoke first again. She said, "Mom said you come back someday." He nodded. He could not look at her. She said you come back and we needed to be ready. He said, "Baby, I am so sorry." She held up one hand. "Not angry. Just tired." She said, "Don't. Not yet. I'm not ready for sorry yet. I just need to know if you're staying or if this is a visit." He thought about that question. He thought about it harder than he had thought about anything since he was 19 years old, and a man named Roach had asked him if he wanted to prospect. He looked at his daughter, this stranger with his blood in her, and he said, "I'm staying. If you'll let me." "I'm done running," she nodded once. She drank her coffee. She got up from the table. She walked into the hallway, and he heard a closet door open, and he heard the sound of something being moved, and she came back into the kitchen carrying a shoebox. A plain brown cardboard shoebox, the kind that has held 1,000 pairs of cheap sneakers in 1,000 American houses. The lid was held down with 2 rubber bands that had gone brittle and 1 strip of masking tape that had yellowed. She set it on the table between them. She sat back down. She put both hands flat on top of the box, like she was holding it shut against something inside. She looked at him and she said, "Before you start saying sorry, I need you to see what I kept for you. For 22 years. Because Mom said you'd come back, and she said when you did, I'd have something to give you." He looked at the box. He did not touch it. He could feel his pulse in his teeth. He said, "What is it, baby?" She slid the box across the table. She said, "Open it." His hands were shaking. He had not noticed until then. He took the rubber bands off, and one of them snapped in his fingers because it had been there since the Bush administration, and he peeled back the masking tape, and he lifted the lid. The box was full of letters. Not a dozen. The box was packed to the brim with envelopes, some white, some yellow, some pink, some torn from notebook paper and folded into shapes, some sealed with stickers of horses and unicorns, and one with a Harley-Davidson logo he recognized from a sticker book he had bought her when she was 4. Every envelope had a stamp on it. Some of the stamps were old enough they did not exist anymore, 37 cents and 39 cents and 41. Every envelope had her handwriting on the front. Some of them said it in crayon, some in pencil, some in a teenager's bubble script with little hearts over the eyes, and some in the careful, neat hand of a college student. Every single one said the same word she had said to him on the porch. "Pie, pie, Daddy, pie." One of them near the top just said PA in block letters with a thick black marker. Not one of them had an address. The to line said Pa, and the from line said Jolene, and the rest of the envelope was blank, because she had not known where to send them. Cal sat there with his hands on the edge of the box, and he did not breathe for a long time. He picked up the one on top. It was the smallest one. It was the oldest one. The envelope was yellow with age, and the stamp on it cost 37 cents, and the handwriting was in red crayon, and it was so big and so wobbly that it took up the whole front of the envelope. He turned it over. It was sealed. He looked at his daughter. He could not make his mouth work. She said, "That's the first one. I wrote it the day after you left. I was 6. Mom helped me find an envelope. She told me you'd come back someday, and I should write you so I'd have something to give you when you did. She let me put a stamp on it because I asked. She said we didn't have to mail it because we didn't have your address. She said when we got your address we'd mail them all." She paused. She wiped her eye with the back of her hand. She said, "We never got your address, Pa." He opened the envelope. He had to fight the seal because it had been sealed by a 6-year-old spit 21.5 years ago, and the glue had welded shut. The paper inside was a single page from a kindergarten workbook, the kind with the dotted lines for practicing letters. The crayon writing crossed all the lines. It said, "Pa, when are you coming home? I have a loose tooth. Mom said you'll be back. Mom said write you a letter. I love you. Jolene." There was a drawing under it of a man on a motorcycle with a beard, with an arrow pointing at him that said PA, and another figure beside the motorcycle, a smaller one with a triangle dress and stick legs, with an arrow that said me. The motorcycle had 3 wheels, because she had not yet learned that motorcycles only had 2. Cal Sutherland, who had not cried at his wife's grave because he believed he had not earned it, put the letter down on the table, and he put his face in his hands, and he cried into his palms in his daughter's kitchen for the first time in his entire adult life. He cried the way men cry when they have held it in for so long that the dam has rotted, which is not loud and not pretty, just shoulders shaking and breath coming in long broken pulls. Jolene did not move. She did not touch him. She let him have it, because she was kinder than he deserved, because Doreen had raised her to be kinder than anyone deserved. After a while, he wiped his face on the sleeve of his cut, and he picked up the next letter. He read every one of them. They took him through the night. He read the one she wrote at 7 when she lost a tooth. He read the one at 8 when she rode a bike for the first time and skinned both knees. He read the one at 9 where she had decided she was going to be a horse trainer, and the one at 11 where she had decided she was going to be the President of the United States. He read the one at 12 where she asked him, 3 pages long in cursive she was clearly practicing, if she had done something wrong that made him leave, and he had to put the letter down and walk to the sink and splash water on his face. He read the one at 14 where she had her first kiss with a boy named Marcus who turned out to be a jerk, and the one at 15 where she got her learner's permit. He read the one at 16 where she made the honor roll. He read the one at 17, which was thicker than the rest, which had a folded piece of yellow legal pad tucked inside it, and that was the one. That was the one that broke the last unbroken piece of him. The letter started, "Pa, I think Mom is sick. She doesn't want to tell me, but I can tell. She's been to the doctor 3 times in 2 weeks, and she keeps saying it's just her blood pressure, but Mom does not go to the doctor 3 times in 2 weeks for blood pressure. I am scared. I am so scared. I don't know where you are, but I need you to know I am scared." It went on for 4 pages. It ended with, "I love you. Please come home. Please." Jolene. He set that letter aside with hands that no longer felt like they belonged to him, and he unfolded the yellow legal pad. It was written in the same handwriting but more careful, the way you write when you know other people are going to read it. The top of the page said, in big letters underlined twice, "For PAS funeral." He stopped reading. He looked at his daughter. She was crying now quietly into the rim of her coffee mug. She said, "I wrote it after Mom died. When I was 17. I thought you had to be dead too. I thought there was no other reason a man wouldn't come back for his wife's funeral. So I wrote a eulogy for you, in case I ever found out where you were buried. So I'd have something to read." He looked back at the paper. He read it. He read the eulogy his living daughter had written for his presumed dead self when she was 17 years old, 8 months after her mother had died in a parking lot. It said my pa's name was Calvin Sutherland. He was a biker. He wore a leather jacket with a patch on the back that I was not supposed to touch when I was little, but I touched it anyway because it was soft on the inside. He had a beard that scratched when he kissed my forehead. He smelled like leather and the kind of gasoline you put in a motorcycle, which is different from the gasoline you put in a car, but I do not know why. He left when I was 5. I do not know why he left, and I am not going to lie about it today and say I do. I think he had reasons. I think the reasons were bad ones and good ones, and the kind that get tangled up so even the person who has them cannot tell the difference. I am not going to say he was a good father. He was not a good father. A good father stays. But I want to say, because this is my eulogy and I get to say what I want, that he was my pa. He was the only pa I ever had. And every night for 12 years I went asleep telling myself that wherever he was thinking about me too, because I needed that to be true. Mom said it was true. Mom said he loved me. Mom said he was sick in the part of himself that knew how to come home, and that someday he would get better, and someday he would come back. He did not come back in time. He did not come back for Mom. He did not come back for me. But I want to say today that I forgive him. I forgive him because Mom said to. I forgive him because hating him is heavier than I can carry. I forgive him because I am 17 years old and I do not have any parents left. And if I do not forgive him, then the last thing I have of him is anger, and I do not want my last thing of him to be anger. I love you, Pa. I hope wherever you are now you are with Mom. I hope she yelled at you when you got there. I hope she forgave you too. Goodbye. He stopped reading. He could not read anymore. He set the eulogy down on the table, and he sat in his daughter's kitchen at 3 in the morning, and he did not move, and he did not speak. The cat clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, the dog had stopped barking. Jolene reached across the table, and she took his hand. Her hand was warm. It was the first time she had touched him since she was 5 years old. She said, I never read it to anyone. I just wrote it. I put it in that letter because I didn't know what else to do with it. And then a year went by, and I didn't die, and I kept writing the letters because Mom had told me to. I wrote one when I graduated high school. I wrote one when I got into college. I wrote one when I got my first teaching job. I wrote one last year. They're all in there. Cal looked at the box. He looked at the years of his daughter's life, sitting in a cardboard rectangle on a kitchen table, in a house he had never been inside before. He said the only thing he could think of to say, I'm here, baby. I'm here now. She squeezed his hand. She said, I know, Pa. They sat like that for a long time. He did not let go of her hand, and she did not let go of his. He stayed. That was the thing he had promised, and that was the thing he did. He did not bolt at the first hard conversation, and there were hard conversations, more of them than he could count. He stayed for the conversation about why he had not come to her mother's funeral. He stayed for the conversation where she asked him if he had ever loved her mother, and he told her that he had loved her mother more than he had ever loved any human being on earth, and that the proof was that he had not been able to look at her face without breaking, which was a coward's proof, but it was the only proof he had. He stayed for the conversation where she asked him if he had any other children, and he told her no, and she cried, and he did not know if she was crying because she was relieved or because she had been carrying the possibility of siblings for a long time. He got a room at a motel for the first 2 weeks because he did not want to assume, and then she told him on a Tuesday night that the motel was stupid, and there was a guest room at her house, and he was either her father or he was not. And if he was, he should sleep in the guest room. He moved in that Saturday. He hung his cut in the closet. He still rode his bike, but he rode it slower, and he rode it more often to the elementary school where she taught so he could pick her up on Fridays, and the kids who came out of the building started waving at the old biker on the Harley. He met the man she was dating, a quiet carpenter named Wyatt who had hands like furniture and a voice like a low fire, and Cal liked him before he had any right to like anyone connected to his daughter. They got married in the spring of the second year Cal was home. Cal walked Jolene down the aisle in a navy suit he had bought new for the occasion, because his cut did not belong at a wedding and he knew it. He cried at the altar. He had become a man who cried now. He had become a man who let things land on him and stayed standing afterward, which was the trade he had been refusing to make for 40 years. He gave a toast at the reception. He stood up with a glass of champagne he was not going to drink, and he looked at his daughter in her white dress, and he said, I do not deserve to be standing here. I was not here when she was 6 and 7 and 8. I was not here when her mother got sick. I was not here when her mother died. I have one job tonight, which is to tell you, Jolene, that I see who you became without me. You did that yourself. Your mother did that with you. The only reason I am standing here is because you are kinder than I am. Thank you for the shoebox. Thank you for the eulogy you wrote when you thought I was dead. I keep it in my wallet. I read it when I forget what I owe you. To Jolene. To Wyatt. To the years ahead. Jeline came around the table and she hugged him for a long time and she did not say anything because there was nothing left to say. The baby came 18 months after the wedding. A girl. They named her Doreen. Cal was in the waiting room. He had not been in a hospital for any birth he had ever been responsible for, because Doreen had given birth to Jeline alone while Cal was at a rally in Daytona, and that was one of the things he was never going to be able to fix. But he was here for this one. He sat in a vinyl chair in a hallway that smelled like bleach, and he watched the door for 9 hours. When Wyatt came out and waved Cal in, Cal walked down that hallway like a man walking into a church for the first time. Jeline was in the bed. The baby was on her chest, wrapped in a pink blanket with a face like a small, angry potato, and Cal Sutherland, who had been a Hell's Angel and a runaway and a ghost for 62 years, sat down in a chair next to that bed and held his granddaughter for the first time, and his daughter said, "Pa, this is Doreen." "Doreen, this is your pa." The baby opened her eyes. Cal looked at her. He did not say anything for a long time, because the only thing he could think to say was that he was going to be here. He was going to be here when this baby lost her first tooth. He was going to be here when she rode her first bike. He was going to be here in a way he had never been here for her mother, because his daughter had given him a second chance he had not earned, and a third chance he had not asked for, and a fourth chance he was going to spend the rest of his life trying to deserve. He said finally in a whisper to the baby, "Hey, kid. I'm your pa's pa. I'm sticking around." Jeline heard him. She smiled. She closed her eyes. She slept. Cal sat in that chair until the sun came up. He did not put the baby down. He did not move. Wyatt brought him another coffee at 6 in the morning, and Cal did not drink it, because he could not let go of the baby long enough to lift the cup. "The shoebox is in a closet now. Jeline gave it to him on the day he moved in. She said, 'These belong to you, Pa.' They always did. I was just keeping them for you." He keeps the box on the top shelf of his closet. He takes it down sometimes when the house is quiet and reads one letter at random, because he has rationed them like a man on a long road. He has not thrown a single one away. The eulogy is in his wallet, folded into a square, behind a picture of Doreen at 23 and a picture of Jeline at 5 in strawberry pajamas. He is not the man he was. He will never be the man he should have been. But he is here, on a porch in Belden Falls, in a town he swore he would never set foot in again, in a chair his son-in-law built for him, watching his granddaughter chase a chicken across a yard he helped fence in last spring. And every now and then, when he is not expecting it, a small voice from somewhere in the yard or somewhere in the house yells, "Pa," and he answers, every single time without thinking, because he has finally become the kind of man who answers when his daughter calls.